See, I've been waiting. Waiting on that time. Feel me if you've been waiting on yours. That moment, it's close.
Welcome back, everybody, to the leading DC Fight Sports podcast. My name is Joe Gilpin, joined as always here on the Fighter's Block by Mr. Jesse Rivas. How you doing, Mr. Jesse Rivas?
Doing fantastic. I have to correct you real quick. It is the #1 sports podcast, period. We're talking about global. We're not even talking about global. We're talking about Mars, Jupiter, and all of the above. If there are other planets and other life forms out there, they're not producing the...
They don't have the laugh per minutes that we do, and the knowledge drops that we do. They just don't have it. Then nobody has what we have. Because we're sitting here, we have the King of Salvadorian Strong Style.
And congested, and still kicking butt.
And
like
wildly
a soldier.
congested.
No limit. 1996. All right, let's go.
King of Sad Style, King of Bong Style. I'm gonna start going by the $1 Million Sham, Joe Gilpin. The host with the boast, Joe Gilpin. I'm just gonna keep giving myself like 10,000 nicknames. I'm
and
never
then
gonna stop.
Your final nickname should be known only by
From parts unknown, Mr. Joe Gilpin. How you doing this week, Jesse? You are mad congested. It is the weather. Harvey has you mad fucked.
That is so weird. I was not congested until I decided to drive here. And then on the drive here, the 20-minute drive from my house to your house, did I just completely get congested? It's weird.
It's because it's a white people neighborhood. We're rejecting you. It's we that's the new thing in white neighborhoods is we put out mad pollen that
make sure these Mexicans don't breathe all the white man's air.
gotta be getting up out of my air. I mean, we pay good money for this air. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know. There's nothing around it. Air is the new racism.
We had some interesting fights this past weekend.
We had some interesting fights this past weekend. We had some interesting. Did you watch the UFC fights? You would be one of 3 people. I'm the other one.
I heard from a lot of people that it started crashing and causing issues.
Well, they expected only 2 people, and they got 3. So they were at 150% capacity. So I take my hat off to them. Yeah, there were some crashing issues, but there's some good stuff. I want to start out the podcast by throwing out a shout out to my boy CR Bahadurzada. CR the Great picked up that knockout win up at 185. Looked great. Beat the unbeaten Rob Wilkinson by knockout. Fuck yes, CR.
Fantastic. He has great power.
He has the best striking. I think he would, if everybody just got in there and made like a gentleman's agreement, like no grappling, no clinching, none of this, CR would be the world champion, no doubt in my mind.
What would you call a sport like that? Would you call it boxing?
I suppose I might go with kickboxing would be a good one, but he also, he almost had a Darce at one point. He looked really good in that fight. He's healthy now. He's all focused. He is on a rocket to the top.
And he was in a higher division.
Yeah, he was at 185. He needs to get his fat ass back down to 170 real quick. Because he's a 170 pounder. That's where he's going to do the most damage, but I'm really happy that his power would land at heavyweight.
Would I be overstepping because I'm a fan. He's a great fighter, but he doesn't fight frequently. Could you share why he hasn't been in the cage?
Oh,
frequently?
sure. I mean, I don't know how deeply I can get into anything, but I mean, he's been pretty clear about he's had injuries.
Oh, okay.
That have held him back, and leading up, he had one fight signed. He just had an illness, very, very bad illness that he just couldn't train for 3 weeks in the middle of his training camp, and it really depleted his energy and his cardio. So it was like he was starting his fight camp in the middle, like he was starting it completely over. Not a good situation. Wow. He pulled himself, which was the smart thing to do. It was exactly what he should have done. So
as long as he's not fighting because he's at the club.
No, he's all in. And when you look at like UFC social media stuff, he's actually usually in the top 10 whenever he posts something. It gets more likes than almost anybody. I'm pretty sure he's got to be one of the highest non-champions, certainly. And that's because of his Afghani base. I've been around with him, and just like people come up to him all the time from Afghanistan. He's a huge celebrity over there.
You know what he should do? He should just be like, you need to listen to the Fighters Block podcast.
No, I'm the fucking nerd in the back. Like, hey, by the way, there's a really it's like an audio. It's like radio, but it's on the internet. Oh, did somebody give you a radio show? We kind of gave it to ourselves, really. It's about saying yes to yourself sometimes and like giving yourself permission. So, yeah, that's what you should listen.
Big shout out. We had another great stoppage. The main event was a good stoppage.
Yes, before we get to the stoppage, we can talk about the stoppage, but there's something I want to talk about with this fight. Volkov picked up a KO win over Stefan Struve, which you can get as easily as it's like a take a number at a deli counter.
Great. I was like, it's a great, and I was like, I oversold it.
Yeah,
I went too far.
It's like you remember Houston Alexander. Do you remember Houston Alexander? It's like a submission win over Houston Alexander. Like he just didn't know anything down there. He just had no fucking clue. It's the same thing with knocking out Stefan Struve. He just doesn't. He gets knocked out very easily, and he crumbles like a motherfucker. I guess because he's so tall. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it takes so long for him to hit the ground. You see him get knocked out, and then you check your watch, you look at your phone, you talk to your boy. He's halfway down.
Why didn't he try basketball? Like, I mean, clearly this isn't what you.
He wanted to fight. I mean, some people, fighting to me it's the best sport in the world. If people want to try it, I'm all for it. But man,
He had so much potential at like 21 and 19 that it's 100% the fault of his management to put him up there with Junior Dos Santos in his first fight in the
Junior
UFC.
Dos Santos, Roy Nelson. I mean, he went through a murderer's row so early.
Before he could rent a car legally, he had fought some of the most vicious monsters from around the world.
Because people forget, he's like 30. He's not an old guy.
Yeah.
And he's been in the UFC for over a decade. And even he has fights where he got knocked out, certainly, and took plenty of damage there. How many fights have we seen him in where he won the fight, but he took a boatload of damage? He's always had a huge heart. Ask his doctor, it's technically enlarged. But he just wasn't able to do it. Something I will say about this fight, I was very impressed with Volkov. I always want to call him Nikolai Volkov.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, right? Alexander Volkov. I was very impressed by him. He looked good. He was able to establish a jab and a leg kick game early, which I think paid off down the stretch. He also invested in an eye poke game because there was at least two.
Dusty Rose style.
Yeah, just right in there.
Yeah.
There was at least two really deep, really serious eye pokes in this fight that the ref didn't really do anything. He would stop and give Stefan time to recover, but you can't recover in 5 minutes.
It's John Jones.
Exactly. You can't recover in 10 minutes. You can't recover in an hour. You need to, take your time and really get that sorted away.
By the way, if you ever realize when Chuck Liddell beat Randy Couture the 2 times that he knocked him out, right before he knocked him out, he poked his
I poked
eye.
it. Yeah. No, yeah. Liddell
Both
was just
times.
like there with John Jones. That's why Liddell, last year, he was like, oh yeah, I would knock out John Jones. It's like, that would be a fucking eye poke contest like no other, and I am into it.
They would both just walk around the cage with their fingers out.
Like this weird, you would hear about, or you would see like old Bruce Lee movies, and it would be like all these different types of fighting styles.
You know how like the coaches always shout out like some kind of code to do something? They'll call it the running with scissors.
Yeah. But my point is, when are we going to do something about eye pokes? Is someone going to have to lose an eye? Honestly, is my question.
Michael Bisping.
It already happened to
But
a
that was
UFC
an
champion.
eye poke, though. That was a kick.
That was a kick to the side of the head from a roided out of his mind Vitor Belfort, TRT Tour. What if Stefan Struve had his eye? Remember Mike Winkeljohn? He caught an eye poke. His eye basically poured out into his hand. And it happens. It happens in Muay Thai a lot more frequently than it does in MMA. But these eye injuries are going to start to happen, especially if we don't do anything. To me, first time it happens, I take a point. Fuck you. Don't poke people in the eye. It is illegal. Do not poke people in the eye. While he was moving in, I was just judging. Fuck you. Don't poke people in the eye. It's on you as an athlete not to poke people in the eye. And for sure, don't kick him in the dick while we're at it. Stay legal is what I'm saying. But also play dangerous. Am I right?
And that was a message from the Fighter's Block from Joe Copin, ladies and gentlemen. You want to put that as your Facebook profile.
Stay dangerous.
Yes. Take a picture of yourself, put a selfie, and have that be the
Play
quote.
by the rules, but stay dangerous. Might end up being a shirt.
You know what? I'm going to have to be honest. Like, I was underwhelmed by this card.
Oh, yeah. It was set up to underwhelm.
And,
you mean this, 2 p.m. Saturday card that I think I was the only person not related to one of the fighters who was watching. And even then, I was friends with one of the fighters.
I've been underwhelmed with all the cards that have been put together by the UFC lately. I mean, they haven't had anything that's going to really spark huge pay-per-view buys. Like, do you see anything in the upcoming future that could potentially break 1 million pay-per-view buys?
Things that are announced and signed?
Correct. Or things that are possible in the next 6 months.
Things that are possible. Conor and Nate, whatever Conor does, it's going to break 1 million, no problem. Beyond that, John Jones is looking at 4 years on the shelf. Cyborg.
Ronda
really
Rousey's looking at the WWE.
She's in, dude. They set up they're having this women's tournament in the WWE right now. And Shayna Baszler, spoiler alert, is in the finals out of 32 women. And they're going to do this thing at WrestleMania where it's these 4 major WWE girls versus
Oh, they're doing this at WrestleMania?
I'm almost certain.
Oh,
like that's my
fantastic.
guess. That's my guess. Versus like Ronda Rousey, Shayna Baszler, and like the other two four horsewomen. You know what I mean? There was always just the other two. There was one that was a little taller, Jessamine Duke, and the other one that's married to Roderick Strong. I'm sorry, I don't remember her name. I really should.
It's the girls that never won in the UFC. Do you remember those girls?
Yeah, I remember Ronda. Yeah. I remember Ronda at the end. I remember Shayna.
Yeah.
I remember Shayna didn't win.
Like the worst win-loss records.
Yeah, I remember people who trained with Edmund. By the way, congrats to Mr. and Mrs. Ronda Rousey on getting married. Good for them. I don't think we ever see Travis Browne again.
No.
I don't think we ever see him again.
Speaking of heavyweights, there has been a lot of movement and a lot of fights announced in boxing in the heavyweight division lately. It's been just each and every month there's a big heavyweight fight.
Well, the landscape is so different now that it's King Joshua.
Yes. Is it King Joshua? Does he have it? See, the way I describe the heavyweight division is...
To me, he's the right
Long ago, there was a great king that had all the kingdoms united. His name was Lennox Lewis. He was a mighty warrior that was the last to survive the great battles of the last great edge of the heavyweight division. He conquered Tyson. He conquered Holyfield. I mean, he conquered the who's who. Then there was a two-headed dragon that came to conquer the land. We call them the Klitschko brothers. They both took over. After a great battle with the king, he decided it was too old, and it was now the era of the two-headed dragon. As they either aged out or lost to Tyson Fury, the titles got dispersed.
This is starting to fall apart a little bit.
Okay, there was a mad king.
Here we go.
There was a mad gypsy king who actually defeated the great dragon, and the madness overcame him, so the titles got dispersed. Then there was princes from different lands that took over the titles in hopes to unify to become a great king. There was the New Zealand-born Joseph Parker. There was the British Anthony Joshua. There was the American Deontay Wilder. And Klitschko tried to come back to claim 2 of the 4 magical belts. But he was defeated. And now it looks like the leading king is Anthony Joshua.
And join us next week where I tell you why middleweight is just Dragon Ball Z, everybody. Yeah, fucking
It's
nerd.
Game of Thrones.
I don't
this
watch
whole
Game of
thing
Thrones.
is Game of Thrones.
I don't watch Game of Thrones.
Of course, if you had 2 belts, what's the problem with having 2 belts? Let's say you were the Bellator champion and the UFC champion. What's the 2 issues that are going to happen?
I got to fight one of these guys. I got to fight the Bellator number 1 contender or the UFC number 1 contender. And they're both going to want me at the same time.
And that's the big problem that Anthony Joshua had faced. So you have the WBA number 1 contender, Luis Ortiz, who's been the number 1 contender forever, who's like, hey man, I'm telling people I'm 38, but everyone pretty much knows that I'm 45. I need to get a title shot before I become too old to do anything. And the other one is Pulev. Pulev is the IBF number 1 contender. So he had to choose one of the above. But here's the problem. He wants to fight Deontay Wilder next. So the only way to settle it was he fights one of his number 1 contenders, Pulev, and have...
We got to change his name. We got to give him a nickname. I can't hear Pulev this many times.
And Wilder got to fight Ortiz for the right to fight against Joshua after. So that's where we're at. But what's the problem with Wilder doing that? He's a champion, and he has his number 1 contender.
He's got a bunch of shit.
So Stefan, the guy who kind of helped build Canadian heavyweight boxing, is the number 1 contender, and he's going to have to fight against Dominic Breazeale. What Wilder had to do was pay him step-aside money, so he's getting paid a step-aside. Then he's also getting paid to fight against Breazeale for the interim title.
Are we going Brazil or are we going Breazeale on that? I go Breazeale.
Let's go Breazeale.
Yeah.
I've heard it pronounced both ways.
Let's get the names right. That's very important in Game of Thrones, is to get the names right. It's not Tyrion, it's Tyrion. Get it right. I don't even watch it. I don't even watch it, but to fuck around these days, you kind of need to know a little bit of Game of Thrones, because every hot dumb girl is into Game of Thrones. Oh my god, it's the best show. Oh yeah, I'm so sure. Oh, you mean that show where if it didn't have crazy names and it didn't cut away every 30 seconds to somebody new, that it would be a terrible show? That show? Yeah, that's how god. Oh my god, that's how god. You're right.
Game of Thrones is the greatest show on earth.
How
dare you, sir?
If they had to focus on any storyline. People are like, oh my god, but by season 7, it's incredible. Okay, it's season 7. For sure, I'm not sitting through that. Get to it. Cut to the chase. That's why I like Star Wars. You start, big chase. Love it. Continue.
The first 3 Star Wars are garbage, by the way.
Oh my God. I will end this podcast right now, sir. How dare you? How dare.
It didn't pick up till the 70s when they started at 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm not into these games.
Episode 1, 2, and 3 sucked. 4
Three's
was great.
okay. 3's okay.
It's aight.
It's aight.
It's aight. It's aight.
We are so off the rails.
Yeah, so in closing, you got September 23rd. You have Fury versus Parker for the WBO. Wilder fights against Ortiz on November 4th with Stefan versus Brazil on the undercard. And you have Joshua Pulev on October 28th. And this is probably the last time I'm going to mention Pulev on this podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, until the fight happens. And we'll give him a cool nickname at that point.
The poo pusher or something, I don't know. But this is a very it's a very complicated world right now for the heavyweight attorneys.
Soon. We're soon to unify. We're gonna get our next great king.
Do you think there's one guy out there that is gonna really? Do you think Anthony Joshua is that guy to really hold together the crown?
We could see who's gonna fight each other in this. Like, there's already agreed upon if this guy beats this guy's next kind of thing. Like, the promoters are talking, the TV stations are talking. This is good. This is great for boxing. So let's go through some of the bigger names. All right, we have Hughie Fury. Okay, who's the brother of the cousin of Tyson Fury.
It is Tyson Fury in a mustache. Don't believe anything else. Hughie Fury is not a real person. It's Tyson trying to be a character, trying to like do an SNL type thing. Hey, what if I put on a hat and everybody thought I was a different guy? Okay, Hughie, sure. Hughie.
What if I fight with a bow tie?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't think that he believes he's the number one guy because he said that if he beats Parker, he's going to try to make a big mega fight with Hay. So.
Okay. That's out of nowhere.
Which is weird, right? Because Hay just lost.
Yeah.
But Joseph Parker's in for it. Joseph Parker being the younger of the group, how do you see his development so far? Do you think he could potentially be the guy? Or you think he's a step below the bigger names?
Are you asking me, do I think that the Joseph Parker that is in existence today is the guy? Or do I think the Joseph Parker in 2 years is the guy? Because these are two very different questions.
I say the trajectory of him in a year and a half.
Year and a half? So yeah. We're saying the same thing there, basically. He'll still be a half step behind Joshua. But Joseph Parker is going to be a strong top 3 in this division for a while, I think.
Be interesting.
The guy that I see in terms of these top-level, top-rank heavyweights really suffering and struggling, unfortunately, is going to be Wilder, who I know we haven't talked about, and he's off doing his own thing, fighting.
Well, Wilder's going to fight against Ortiz, and truth be told, I think that's a terrible...
I don't love that fight for him at all. Ortiz is super dangerous, has no name, is not going to fall for the same bullshit that, let's be honest, Deontay Wilder gets away with a lot.
Yeah.
You know, he has his same 2 or 3 things, and, you know, he's just able to out-horse everybody. You ain't horsing Ortiz. Yes. You ain't horsing a Cuban. I'm sorry, you're just not. Do you remember the last time you saw a Cuban get bullied in the ring?
No.
I don't remember it, ever.
Oh, yeah. Sullivan Barrera by Andre Ward.
Okay, fair.
But...
okay, by somebody who wasn't the number 1 pound-for-pound boxer on the planet.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen. It doesn't happen.
Deontay Wilder showed a lot of flaws against inexperienced Gerald Washington. And you could only just imagine, what if that had been somebody...
Is that the fight where Homeboy's ankle exploded? What was that one again? I don't even remember the guy's name off the top of my head.
You're thinking of Charles Martin versus...
Charles Martin.
That Russian guy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. That was the worst.
That
okay,
Russian
yeah.
guy? Yeah.
Continue.
So, I especially Ortiz, quietly people have said the two best heavyweights on the planet are Ortiz and Joshua. But the problem is, will Ortiz age out? Now, he says he's 38, but apparently everyone in boxing...
That is he says he's 38 the same way fat girls take, like, very close-in selfies on Tinder, where it's like, they don't even show the sides of their face. It's like, we all, like, listen, if you're in the trenches, swiping left, swiping right, you know the angles, right? You know the fat girl angles by now. And... All power to them. I bet they do crazy game. I bet they do better than I do on there. But we all know what's going on there.
Everyone in the know says it's kind of bullshit and they don't believe it. they say the math doesn't make sense because of certain competitions he won as an amateur. They're like, he's probably 45. And he looks 45.
The same thing happens in wrestling, international wrestling a lot, where it's like, okay, this guy says he won this tournament, which has 17-year-old age maximum on it, which means this is a photo of him at 11 when he's 6'4" and built like a fucking steroided model. So what the fuck are they doing in the Ukraine or wherever? You know what I mean? Just like, no, okay, you're lying.
I think that's a tough matchup. Stavern, Brazil, that's going to be a tough one. I think Stavern is really pushing for a title shot just because I think this is the end of his road.
Yeah.
I think the fight against Wilder, he did good, but he still lost. I think it's one of those fights that if Wilder doesn't take him seriously, he would lose.
Yes.
But it's a lot of effort to beat Stavern, but I don't think he would ever lose to Stavern.
You got to show up, but if you show up, you win.
Yeah.
I agree.
And then you have Joshua Pulev. Is Joshua the guy?
I don't know if I see anybody beating Joshua, especially after that fight. Man, I don't see it.
But here's the thing, though. If Ortiz lands with any of these guys, it's lights out. He's the hardest hitter in the entire division.
The real King Kong, Luis Ortiz.
Do you think he calls himself King Kong just to fuck with white people?
We're going to talk about white people here in a second.
Because here's the thing. You see how uncomfortable all the announcers always are when they have to call him King Kong?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Well, it's like Bob Sapp back in the day. You remember, like, Bob Sapp has, like, all these, like, super uncomfortable commercials where he's, like, beating his chest with bananas. Like, they're wildly racist. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. You know, a lot of athletes, particularly in K1, they were offended by Bob Sapp so much that's why they hated him and they kind of ostracized him from the locker room. Like, that's why Ernesto Hus was, like, really trying to beat him down and really making this big rivalry, which he lost.
Yeah.
He lost both the fights, but still, like, he had, like, this heated rivalry with Bob Sapp because he said, you make black people look bad in Japan. With those
Which was true. He was doing this, like, maybe I shouldn't say this term, but he was doing this weird, like, sambo routine all the time in Japan. You know what I mean?
He would pretend to be an ape and he would eat bananas.
Yeah.
Like, it was really bad. It's really
yeah.
bad.
It was as bad as it gets. Like, it doesn't get worse.
Yeah.
But he got fucking paid.
Speaking of guys who should get fucking paid this weekend,
No,
HBO.
real quick, even before that, let's still talk about race stuff. Because there's another guy I want to talk about.
Yeah.
There's a headline that went around this week that I think was like a little like it was 1% unfair. It was 99% like, yeah, this dude should not have said that. That was not okay. But when you dive into what he really said, it's a little bit more nuanced than that, and I think that deserves to be said. Michael Bisping apparently is part of the alt-right now. He's always had the haircut, right? He's always had that like shaved on the side. Kind of thing, which, by the way, if you're any dude still rocking that haircut, I get to assume stuff about you. You know what I mean? That's the equivalent of, like, when my grandmother saw a dude with, like, dreads and, like, you know, gold fronts or something. Like, she'd be like, oh, he must be an MS-13 or whatever. Like, I whenever you have, like, the neo-Nazi haircut, I'm like, oh, that dude, you know, marched in Charlottesville and voted for Trump and loves mayonnaise. So Michael Bisping went on this thing. Here's the quote. Do you know this quote? Not even a little bit, right? He was talking about Tyron Woodley and why Tyron is not getting marketed better, and we've both said we think it's a little bit racially motivated, at least partially racially motivated. To be fair, he has turned in 2 dog shit fights back to back.
True,
and that's what Michael was saying. He's like, you had a very boring fight with Stephen Thompson, you had a very boring fight with Damian Maia, where nobody did anything and they were booing like crazy. So you're gonna catch some heat for that. And then he was talking to his co-host, and this is what he said. He said, did he call the UFC racist? Did he go out there and say the UFC? Did he say that racism exists in the UFC? Because that's a strong quote. I'll be honest, I can't see that. And that's what people are hopping onto. It's just like Michael Bisping says, Tyron Woodley is wrong, the UFC isn't racist. He follows it up with this. Of course, I'm not black, I'm English. Then he goes right back into even more problematic. You ready? You strapped in? You strapped in? There's an audio podcast. They cannot see you nodding.
Okay. I'm in.
These days, white people seem to be suffering a lot of racism, too.
Oh.
It's almost a sin to be white these days because we're overprivileged just because the color of our skin. Which, like, when he says that, when he's like, we are overprivileged, I'm like, that is true, but we're not suffering it. We're bringing it back to something a lot, like, more even. He continues, but yeah, I've never experienced racism, so I can't empathize with him and put myself in his shoes. But I'll go out and say, come on, the UFC wants to put on the biggest fights and the best fights, and I don't think color of the skin comes into it, but maybe I am wrong. So there's like, you can see him like trying to buy it back.
Yeah.
But like, if you stick a knife in 6 inches and pull it out 5, you're not making progress. You know what I mean? Like, This is some dumbass shit to say. You should be called a fucking idiot over this. You should lose a little bit of your marketing push over this. This is a dumb thing to say. That's fucking... He should blame it on the weird eye, right? That's what I would do. That's the move. Is just be like, listen, I can't... In my right eye, I can't see racism. Well, maybe, I can't see shit.
Well, maybe he regretted it immediately after he said it, because then he's like, but then again, I've never experienced racism. Which 100% just completely, like... It completely nullifies what you just said. Like, you had just said, like, oh, white people experience racism, too. It's almost a sin to be white. I mean, I've never experienced it. But then if you look at, like, every black person ever or every Latino person, they all have stories. They can tell you shit that, like, they went out with their parent and they were just going to go, like, to like, the store and some racist shit happened. And it was kind of like, oh, we have to be aware of this shit at all times. If you can honestly say that you don't have to think about your race at all times, then it's not the same thing.
Damn, he said a lot of stuff. He called Nick and Nate Diaz white. Damn, this is a Sheether track. I think he is viewing it as like a literal skin tone issue. Like, Nick and Nate are like pale Mexicans, so they count as white. Like, no, when the troops come, that's not going to be like, hey guys, check me on the Sherwin-Williams paint chart. I'm taupe.
Well, race is really confusing in other countries because, like, we think of things differently than other countries do. Like, for example, and I don't agree with this in any way, but I talk to people from other countries that if you're light skinned, you're not considered black. You're considered a whole different ethnicity. And it's weird. It's just a weird way to think about it. So maybe that's how it is in Britain. Like, in Britain, there's only...
Well, the English also have some problems there. I will say, reading through all of this, and I did this before too, he goes on about like, well, John Jones gets paid a lot of money and he's black, but he pulls numbers. Demetrious Johnson doesn't pull numbers. He's black. He doesn't get paid. Tyrod has boring fights. He doesn't get, he's not going to get promotional push because the UFC doesn't want to invest in. He does say this at the end, and this is a big buyback, and this is important because the headlines are not putting this part in there. His co-host tried to move on to a different topic, and he was like, here, let's stop right now. I don't want people out there saying like, oh, this entitled white guy is saying racism doesn't exist. How on earth does he have a clue? He's never experienced it. You're all absolutely right. So if I'm wrong, then I apologize. But I'm just saying, from what I have seen, from where I have sat, I haven't seen any evidence of it in the UFC. In fact, I've seen the opposite. I've seen black athletes be pushed a lot. Rampage Jackson when it came over from Pride. John Jones, Daniel Cormier. But if I did offend anybody, I apologize. There wasn't really any need for offense. But I hope people don't twist this shit or say whatever. Well, tough. Fucking tough, Michael. Because if you put it out there, people are gonna take it. However, never put out a soundbite. You know what I mean? Yeah. Never put out this soundbite where they can just play that.
It sounds like it kind of was a little bit of a witch hunt on him.
A little bit, right? Like when he did try to buy it back as much as possible.
And I appreciate the honest opinion.
Yes.
Because here's the thing, like, I'd rather somebody say what they really feel and be as open-minded as he was of like, hey, if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong, and leave the door open than somebody giving a false narrative of what people think they want to hear but believing something else. I like the fact that he left it open and he was like, hey, look, if I'm wrong, let me know. Let me figure it out, but this is what I think, and this is what I've seen, and I appreciate that.
UFC make racist decisions?
You know what? I kind of feel like Dana White does.
I was going to say the exact same thing. I think they make money decisions, but the UFC, or Dana White definitely has some problematic shit.
There's just some weird shit he's done where I'm kind of like,
Can you remember, he's always had good relationships with, like, Ronda Rousey, Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, famously. Does he have any... Connor, he has a good relationship with. He flies on the jet with, like, the big stars. Has he ever had that with John Jones? No, right?
John Jones did bring it on himself, though.
Yeah, true. John Jones was acting wildly problematic. But, like, Daniel Cormier, like Demetrious Johnson, he can't get in with Demetrious Johnson or anything. Even Rampage, who was also a crazy person. He's never really done
But
that.
Rampage was super marketable.
Yeah, crazy, right? Rampage was just this side of Bob Sapp.
I mean, Rampage, Mayhem Miller would have been a huge star if he had won some fights. Like, there's a few guys that are just marketable. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. But the same thing that makes them marketable fucks them over in everything else.
But, like, a Sage Northcutt, you know.
Yeah, true. Yeah, why is he pushing Sage Northcutt?
Like, why is he pushed?
But not... You can push... As much as you can push Sage Northcutt for being an All-American boy, you can push Tyron Woodley for the exact same thing. He was an All-American. And I promise you, Tyron Woodley has 1,000 Instagram thirst trap counts just teeming the internet. You know what I mean? That dude is built like a fucking... he's built like a fucking...
he's built like he's made to fuck you.
Yes. Oh my! If a horny, tired black woman had to draw a guy, that is who she would draw.
If a gay white man drew a guy he wanted to be fucked by
Or a white woman, anybody, yeah, anyone, yeah.
Wow, we went off the rails there.
Very much so. This was heavily edited. Anybody,
all right, put it this. All right, Shit Congo looks like a model.
yes.
Shit Congo.
Where was Chet Congo's marketing push? That's the best example. Chet Congo is 6'4", built like he's built like a superhero. There's no other way to put it. You know what I mean? I'm trying to think of another phrase besides superhero, but he's built like a goddamn superhero.
What's the name of that model actor dude who was in Blood Diamond?
The Rock, yes. No, Blood Diamond, I have no idea.
He was in Blood Diamond with Leonardo DiCaprio. Well, that guy gets a lot of female attention. Shit Congo look like a better version of him, but he will whoop people's asses.
Yes. I think Jaimin Hansu.
Yeah.
He does look like a better Jaimin Hansu.
Yeah. And that dude
Shout
gets
out
female.
to me for knowing how to pronounce it. Jaimin.
So I'm just saying, they need to they need to open up their mind and figure out what they could do with stuff.
And also, read the whole goddamn article. Because I've seen people getting hot and spicy about Michael Bisping, having hot and spicy comments. He really, he did everything he could to be very upfront about, this is where I'm coming from and this is my blind spots. He has a big blind spot. He only has one eye.
You know who's underratedly marketable? He didn't get as much of a push as he should have, and he was white.
Go on.
Uncle Creepy.
Oh, Ian McCall. Oh, I'm into it.
And Ian McCall got some females. Ian McCall's list of the ladies he's dated. So I would assume that women find him attractive. Even though he's like 5'4" and like 120 pounds.
He pulled tail.
Yeah. He
Good
kicked
for the
ass.
boy.
He had like that hipster look way back in the day.
Yeah, right. A little steampunkish. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure.
So moving on, we have a phenomenal card of little guys just like Ian McCall. This card is kind of condescending, but it's great. I love the name of the title. It's called Superfly.
I was going to go with bite size or fun size.
It's called Superfly because it highlights the top 6 best super flyweights on the planet. This is kind of like a mini tournament, and I mean that all pun intended.
Because we're going to talk about the UFC fights coming up. Do you think that boxing and MMA just like looked at each other like, let's just do the little guys this weekend and get it out of the way? It's like, all do it. It's like a blood oath. Like, okay, we're all going to do this together, right? Like, I know it's going to be scary and it's going to hurt and no one's going to pay attention. But we're going to do it together.
It sucks because, all right, if you look at this card up and down, it looks like it's going to be the fight of the year. It looks like each one of these fights could be fight of the year candidates. They're insane. Okay, so we're going to start off with the main event. We have the rematch versus Thailand's Sor Rungvisai versus...
Damn, give him that again. Listen to the dulcet tones of the king of Salvadoran strong style, giving you the correct pronunciation.
Sor Rungvisai. Damn. Versus Nicaragua's
You can
Roman
hear the panties dropping.
Chocolatito Gonzalez.
How did you fuck up the You speak Spanish.
Because I wrote...
That is your,
I'm going to explain that. You know how there's a boxer called Roman Martinez?
Yeah.
So when I wrote my notes, I wrote Roman Martinez. I was like, Roman Martinez is in a different weight class. That's not even the same guy.
Jesse, you got Sor Rungvisai correct. And you fucked up Gonzalez.
Roman Chocolatito
And your last
Gonzalez.
name is Rivas.
Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. This is the rematch. It's going to be a phenomenal fight.
The first fight was a phenomenal fight.
Yes. The first fight was controversial.
People need to go out of their way and see it because it's an amazing contest of boxing.
Chocolatito Gonzalez got dropped for the first time in his career. This is the first time.
It was a big upset.
Yeah.
It was kind of I think we even said at the time, it's a little bit of a trap fight. This is a very tough guy.
Yes.
But I didn't expect that.
It was a dirty fight too.
Okay.
Sor Rungvisai was a little rough. A couple low blows. It was a rough and dirty fight, but it was good. Basically, one of the big things that was evident in the fight was Chocolatito Gonzalez's his punch power did not translate in this weight class. This is his fourth weight class. Usually, he has game-changing body punching power. This time, Sor Rungvisai just walked through his punches and hit him harder than he's ever been hit in his entire life.
Fuck your power.
Sor Rungvisai brought the power in this fight. So how do you think this one's going to play out? It's the rematch. The last fight was a very close fight. And
the last fight was overseas, right? It was in...
No, it was in New York.
It was in New York? Okay, never mind. I thought it was overseas for some reason. I was changing my
It was
math.
a majority. It was a majority decision for Sor Rungvisai.
Yes. I think it's still up a weight class. Chocolatito has had more time to mature into the weight class. I like Chocolatito to make the proper adjustments in his camp, especially now getting his hands on Sor Rungvisai, being able to feel him. I like Chocolatito to get a decision in this fight. I think he's going to play distance a lot better because he let Sor Rungvisai in on him all night for some very close boxing.
It's because he was used to fighting at lower weight classes. In the last 3 weight classes, his power was crazy, so it was game-changing. A guy could tee off on him, and he'd land one and turn the whole fight around. In the 4th weight class, it's been a huge issue because the same thing happened with his previous fight with Carlos Cuadras. With Carlos Cuadras, it was also like, hey, I'm going to put you away with the shot. Oh, no, you're still there, and you're not even rocked.
Yeah.
So that kind of fucks with your brain when you no longer have your big weapon. I'm scared, okay? Because I've seen this before, where a guy like Sor Rungvisai, who came from
nothing.
He came from nothing. He used to eat from the trash. He walked 60 miles to go to the main city to learn boxing because he needed a way to get paid. He was 13 years old and he needed to put food on the table for himself. He was living on the streets. A lot of times when guys like this get the big fight, they blow up in weight. They party, start fucking hookers.
They live well.
Yeah.
They do all the things they spent a decade dreaming about.
And especially if you're a national hero like he became after beating a guy who was considered the pound-for-pound best fighter on the planet. I'm scared, but if he keeps it together and he trains properly,
we're heading to the racetrack.
I think he can knock out. I think he can stop Chocolatito Gonzalez. Yes.
Interesting.
I think he has his number. The only person who can defeat Sor Rungvisai in this fight is Sor Rungvisai.
Interesting. We'll see. We each have our picks in.
So who you got?
I'm going Gonzalez decision.
You got Gonzalez decision? I got Sor Rungvisai by stoppage.
Word. Chocolatito is a nickname that needs to be shorter. I think I have a nickname where we are supposed to call him Chocolatito. It's not like it was, it's not like King of Sad Style. Nobody's gonna call me that. We're supposed to call this dude Chocolatito. It's too long.
It stands out though. Roman Gonzalez is pretty basic.
Roman is a badass name.
Yeah.
Roman's a badass name.
But you got Roman Martinez. Even I mix him up with Roman Martinez.
Yeah, because you're racist.
It's kind of like
you and Michael Bisping.
It's kind of like when Freddie Hernandez was fighting. I kept calling him Freddie Ramirez, who's a DC comic. I kept messing that up all the time.
By the way, can't walk. You really fuck that up when you mix up those two. One of them is able to walk.
I think one time in this podcast I was like, you're on Humberto Tito with Freddie Ramirez.
Jesus Christ.
And then the mental image.
Oh, they all look alike to you. I get
the mental image of Berto teeing off on a...
Just beating the shit out of wheelchaired Freddie, who's a sweetheart. Love Freddie to death. Love Freddie to death. I've seen Freddie come up and stand up. But yeah, Berto would kill him. I don't know why we're debating this all of a sudden. We have more junior bantamweights.
You know what's funny? We talked about earlier about having multiple nicknames. The next guy who will be fighting in the co-main event is a guy that's one of the pound-for-pound best fighters on the planet. Same weight class. He's a guy that we've been salivating to see on the stateside. He has 3 nicknames. They call him the Japanese Sensation. He's the Monster. He's the Beast. Oh, wait, and I forgot. He's also the Japanese Tsunami. We're talking about Naoya Inoue.
See, I would talk shit about that, but I started this podcast with 3 nicknames, so I can't really talk shit.
He's got 4 or 5. He's that beloved and that amazing. He's got 13 fights and he's accomplished so much. He's like their Lomachenko.
He's a badass.
crazy punch power. He doesn't get hit. I can't explain how he does it.
We talked about this last week, and I believe it too, watching the world of grappling and just different things. Japan's on the way up.
Yes.
Watch out for Japan within the next 5 years. Straight up. 5 to 10. But watch out. They're coming.
It's going to be amazing. But
so long as North Korea doesn't blow them off the map.
But he's going against Antonio Nieves. Now, Antonio is an American super flyweight, which means he hasn't had the best opportunities. He works at PNC as a banker. But when he does get fights, he's looked amazing. He's an Olympic-style American fighter, if that's a good description. I don't know if you can give a better description of what that looks like. Yeah. Very athletic, good fighter, but is this a tall task? Or is this the moment that
No, they're both weighing in like super flyweight, light fly. This is not tall. How tall could they be? He's 5'4". How tall? This is gonna be a very difficult style matchup for him, but I still think this is well within the range of winnable fights for Inoue. He's beat the shit out of everybody. There's no other way to put it. You know what I mean? He's just ran through everybody.
I think this is the fight that's tailor-made to have Americans sold on him.
I agree. And Nieves, coming off of a loss. Coming off of his very first loss. But still a loss.
Yes.
He lost a split to Russian kid, something like that.
Russian guy.
Yeah. Who also on the way up, by the way. Russia, loving him, especially at the higher weights. I think this is they're teeing up in a way here, and I like him to pick up the win.
See, the one thing I'll say about Antonio Nieves is the fact that
no problem with the word Nieves, by the way.
Yeah.
Keeping track.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say about him is you could knock him for having a day job and for doing boxing kind of part time, but he's from a country where there's no super flyweights. There's no one for him to fight. Put it this: Sor Rungvisai and Roman Martinez, they had to fight to put food on the table. They had no choice, right? Inoue, Carlos Cuadras, and El Gallo Estrada, they come from countries where there is a super flyweight division to have competitive fights.
Yes, everybody's super flyweight.
Yeah, Nieves did not have a way out, so maybe this is the moment that he's been waiting for. Maybe he's a lot better than we think he is. I still got Inoue with this fight.
Interesting take, but no.
He's really athletic and he's really fast. So, should be
cool. Inoue's going to beat that ass.
And the third fight, the opener. This fight here is actually the mandatory to fight the winner of Sor Rungvisai versus Chocolatito. This is Carlos Cuadras, the man who beat Sor Rungvisai but lost to Roman Martinez for the title. Is going to be fighting against the arch rival to Chocolatito Gonzalez, El Gallo Juan Francisco Estrada.
Real talk, who do you think Cuadras, because this is a wonderful fight.
Yeah.
Cuadras, I think he's got to be the betting favorite, right? I would imagine. I think so.
I didn't check that. See, I would think Estrada would be.
You would think Estrada? I would think Cuadras. Who do you think Cuadras is favoring to win between in the lead title fight? Who do you think he wants? Does he want Sor Rungvisai again because he beat him and he knows he can get that win?
But he didn't beat him cleanly, though. I mean, it was a controversial kind of stoppage.
Or does he want Roman Martinez because he wants the rematch to...
I think he wants Roman Martinez.
I would agree.
Because he had trouble with Sor Rungvisai. It was a tough fight, and what happened, I think it was cuts or something, that they made it go to the scorecards. And Cuadras won, but it was one of those fights where if it had gone longer, it'd be very difficult to say who would have won that fight. It was a really close fight. So easily Sor Rungvisai could have beat him.
You brought up something earlier about El Gallo Estrada that was very interesting. You want to talk about this?
Yes. Every Spanish news or boxing podcast or anything in Spanish regarding Estrada, they call him El Gallo. They're like, most Spanish people don't even know.
Which, for the record, so did I.
Yeah. But I've noticed that every American podcast and every American,
Wait, are there Spanish podcasts? I guess there are. I'd never considered it.
There's more like TV shows and like YouTube people.
Sure, yeah.
So everyone there calls him Juan Francisco. And I realized, is it too difficult, the double L's and El Gallo?
Yes. It's very difficult on our white tongues. They can't handle spices. They can't handle double LY sounds. We can't handle anything. Our tongues are useless, ladies. So yeah, it's very difficult.
And it's not a knock, but it's like Gennady Golovkin. Gennady Golovkin was too difficult for an American the American tongue to pronounce. Even I had difficulty with it.
Really? I never had problems with Gennady Golovkin.
So, well, you watch
but
wrestling.
I watch a lot of wrestling where
Yeah.
it's a lot of Eastern European names.
So they had to call him Triple G at the beginning when he was coming up. And then once he become famous enough, then people could say it because they've heard it enough times.
I hope he calls one of his sons Quadruple G. I hope so badly that he calls one of his sons Quadruple G. Chocolatito also beat El Gallo way back.
But that was a super close fight, which actually scored for Estrada.
Really? Interesting. I haven't seen that fight in a long time.
It's a great fight. It's one of those fights that kind of made it made them want to put focus on this weight class. Because one thing somebody told me, and I need to go back and see, is the reason why Roman Gonzalez, see when I say Roman, I automatically want to say Martinez. The reason Chocolatito was considered the pound for pound best candidate, like below Floyd at that time, was you have to go back and watch his fights before HBO. Like what he did in those previous weight classes, there was a certain air of like unbeatability to him. And when he fought against El Gallo Estrada, that kind of changed everything. He was a huge underdog. Nobody, like, people in Mexico wanted him to win, but they didn't think he'd win. And he boxed his brains out. Better movement. He put combinations better. There was a few times where he kind of had Chocolatito on a shell. Chocolatito was scared to throw punches to open up.
Do you think that was just him boxing his brains out and having the fight of his life, or do you think that was indicative of where he is? And if they had a rematch, would that just be that?
Well, it's interesting because since then, all he's done is won and collect belts.
He did have a very close fight after that. He had one split decision. Like I think literally the next fight was a split decision. But yeah, he's picked up a ton of TKOs since then. He's only won. He's looked phenomenal. WBO champ, WBA champ, unified. He's looked wonderful.
And he's been wanting this fight. He's been chasing this fight the whole time. This is actually the fight that HBO wanted to build up to have like this big fight before Sor Rungvisai plays spoiler.
I believe it.
So this will be interesting. The worst case scenario for HBO is Estrada wins, Sor Rungvisai wins, and it's two people who haven't really been pushed on HBO to have the next big fight. But Quadras versus Martinez is, I think, what they were.
God
Gonzalez.
Damn it! Do you want me to handle the Spanish-speaking portion of this show from now on? Is that what needs to happen here?
Quadras and Chocolatito is the fight that they want.
Agreed. Yeah, you just go with the nicknames,
Yes.
brother.
Yes.
Who do you think wins, Quadros or El Gallo?
I think El Gallo wins.
See, I'm gonna go Quadros.
Yeah.
We're disagreeing a lot this week.
Well, I mean, this is a close fights. Like both of these are 50-50 in my book.
Also on the undercard, for anybody that wants to check it out, Nam Fan will be doing a 6-round fight. Nam Fan of the UFC. He made the semifinals of the Ultimate Fighter one year. Washed out of the UFC. I think he might still hold a UFC record, like shots landed or something, against Leonard Garcia. He literally landed like 500 strikes in a 3-round fight. It was unbelievable.
And still lost.
Oh my god. How dare you? Leonard Garcia deserves our praise.
What was that weird thing where like Leonard Garcia, for whatever reason,
He always won split decisions.
Yeah.
What was that? He was the Liam Smith of MMA. He would get his ass whooped for 15 minutes and they would raise his hand. It was unbelievable. It happened so many times too.
Speaking of Liam Smith,
and we always
Austin
are.
Trout is suing the WBO because he was supposed to fight for the title against Liam Smith, but they put Liam Walsh instead. So he's suing for $40 million because he was the rightful person to fight Liam Smith. And surprisingly, he was like the number 1 and number 2 contender in the WBO. But because they wanted to make the fight happen, they just removed him.
I promise you, I'm not, this is going to sound like I'm making a joke right now, Jesse Rivas. Liam Smith is going to get that $40 million somehow. Like, he's not going to show up in court. He's not even really going to know the lawsuit is going on. He's going to get that money.
The rumor is that they're gonna lose to Austin Trout, but they don't have $40 million to give him.
Which is an issue.
So they're gonna settle for significantly less, but I think that's why he chose the $40 million number.
I'm with it.
Yeah, like you aim high and then negotiate lower.
Yeah, I've dated. I've been at bars. Start with the 10s, move to the 9s, you move to the 8s, yeah.
So we have a great card. Do we have any UFC action this week?
Yes, we have the UFC Demetrious Johnson fight.
Oh, shit.
Have you not done your proper research, sir? Isn't that this weekend?
I thought that was next weekend.
Well, I might cut this if it is. No, yeah, it's this weekend.
Okay,
September
well,
9th,
let's go with it.
So Demetrious Johnson, number 1 pound for pound fighter on the planet that does not do cocaine. He is fighting. John Jones is the number one if you allow cocaine. He is trying to break the UFC record for most title wins.
It's like in soccer. Like, who's the greatest of all time? Maradona or Pele?
I have no idea.
It depends.
American.
Who does coke? If we choose coke, it's Maradona. If we say no coke, then it's Pele.
He's throwing in the accent to like try to gaslight people. Ray Fatboy Borg is taking this fight, trying to dethrone the 125-pound champion. See, you got too caught up in the little dudes over in boxing. You were thinking about the little dudes over in... What did you think I meant by earlier when I was like, yeah, the UFC is doing a flyweight fight too? What did you think that... Were you just like, oh, Joe had a stroke midair. That's cool.
I thought that was like the 13th or something.
Nah, son.
Which is like a weekday. Okay, I'm rolling with it.
Yeah, it's like, oh, yeah. They're going to fight next Wednesday. For sure, that'll do. Honestly, it wouldn't affect the pay-per-view numbers. Demetrious Johnson, who is everything to everyone. He can fight in any position. He does crazy shit. He is fighting Ray Borg, who is
the tax Mexican devil.
It's a
Why
really
is that
bad.
so weird?
It's a really bad nickname. You can't
That's
do
the
Mexican.
congestion.
Is this Trump's America where like you're slowly whitening? What is this? Is that what that means?
Mexican
Is that what? Are you a DACA kid? What is this? And you're trying to just like, hey, no, I have no idea. Let's watch some Big Bang Theory, everybody. Start talking like the first season of The Simpsons. Let's get frosty chocolate milk. So Ray Borg, very active ground fighter. He wants to take the fight to the ground, top pressure, hunt for submissions. Can be really tough to do that against Demetrious Johnson. I mean, this is just not the guy to beat Demetrious, right? It's not. I don't know who is. I don't know anybody.
I'm gonna be honest. I'm disappointed Demetrious for this fight.
It should have been Cody Garbrandt, right?
Or
no,
TJ.
TJ Dillashaw rather.
All white people are the same to you.
They really are. It's crazy.
All white people who are under 5'9" are the same to you.
It should have been, and soon that will be you. It should have been TJ Dillashaw's much better fight, but they're trying to get him to the record for most title defenses. So they wanted somebody that they knew could make 125. Small problem. Ray Borg has missed 125 twice in the UFC. Like, he's a very low-key... he's the next John Lineker. You know what I mean? He's the next Anthony Johnson kind of guy.
What's a tough weight class? I mean,
okay, you're fighting for a world title.
How many women are 125? Let's be honest.
True.
How many 30-year-old women are 125?
You see a lot of women claim to be 125. Step on that scale, 140 real quick. Real quick, you're 140.
So
take the shoes off. Let's try without the shoes. I'm sure they're each 10 pounds. Let's give it a shot. So he's picked up some really tough wins. He beat Luis Smolka, which is probably his most impressive win. I thought he did miss weight for the fight. He's picked up a couple of submissions in the UFC. He beat Jussier Formiga in his last fight. And he was able to do it from his feet a little bit more, but he does have a UFC loss to Justin Scoggins, who's basically able to dance around it. He wasn't able to keep up with the footwork flow of Justin Scoggins. And if you had problems with Scoggins' footwork, you're in for a long night here, sir.
Yeah, this is kind of a waste of everyone's time. And I'm sorry, like, I love Demetrious Johnson. I'm a big fan.
UFC is racist. Also, don't watch this fight.
I'm a big fan, but at the same time, it's like, how do you just say no? Like, what history does TJ Dillashaw have of not making weight?
Well, they were just afraid that him coming down, he had never made 125. And he hadn't weighed 125 since high school.
That sounds like an excuse to me. Like, he said he was down.
Yeah, to me, that make it great. Put in something, okay, if you miss weight, you lose a huge percentage of your purse. Like, not like 10, 20%. Shit, oh well, I missed weight. I'm still going to knock this dude out. Like, no, fuck you. Give me 80% of your purse.
When Anderson made the record, who did he beat?
Shit. Bonner? No, because Bonner was not at 85.
Was it Chael?
Okami, maybe? Might have been Okami. Well,
okay. Look. If he had a freebie shot, then fine. You know what? If Anderson,
there was a couple. There was a Travis Lutter thrown into the mix. Although it was a very
Travis Lutter was a good fight. Yeah.
There was a couple. Here, take this one's in there. There was a couple James Irvins. I know it wasn't a title defense, but kept him plenty busy. There's a couple Talis Leites in there.
Talis Leites is tough. He just made it. It's not that he fought nobody. He just made him look like nobody. Y'all must have forgot.
Yeah, the record, the last time he defended the middleweight title was against Chael. Remember where he picked up that knee that we all pretend wasn't illegal, but we all kind of know it is illegal. Like, let's be honest. Do you remember that? Where he was like, no, I need him. Most of it hit him in the, like, the point of the knee hit him in the chest. Like, okay, he just needed that dude in the face while he was sitting on his ass. But we just don't like Chael. who was steroided out of his mind. I agree, but I mean, come on, what are we doing?
Okay, so he beat Chael, his arch rival, to set the record
in a fight where he got utterly dominated in the first one, barely won by the skin of his teeth.
And Demetrious Johnson's gonna fight
Ray Borg, who like no one has heard of.
In 20 years, are you gonna remember Ray Borg?
No. Yeah. And if he wins this fight, I will.
Yeah.
This is his chance. So this is one of 2 title fights.
Demetrious is a plus 250,000.
Okay, there you go. I was like, I will make money tonight, sir.
I just made up that number, by the way.
So there's 2 title fights. That's one. The other one, Amanda Nunes.
Which should be the main event.
Should be the main event. I hope it's the main event. Maybe it is.
It's sexist that this isn't the main event.
Amanda Nunes coming off the big knockout win over Ronda Rousey last year. It's not been active. She's finally going to fight Valentina Shevchenko. This fight was scheduled, but it got pulled out because Amanda Nunes was having some kind of medical issue the day of the fight.
Hey, you know what? She was talking about her sinuses were an issue. Guess what? I'm still doing the podcast. I got sinus issues. How about that, son? Catch me outside.
Don't do the Cash Me Out. No, that's over. That's over.
Damn
we
it.
can't do Cash Me Outside anymore. I'm sorry.
Yo.
See, you're whiting up.
Do you know how rich she is? She just shot the music video.
Didn't they? I'm not saying this as a joke. I think Nick Diaz fucked her. Like, there was a lot of like Snapchat videos of them like hanging out a little too much. Like hanging out a little too. You know what I mean? Like, not okay.
So weird.
Weird that upstanding, never makes a bad decision guy, Nick Diaz, may have also made a bad decision. Weird. She's going to fight Valentina Shevchenko, who it turns out is...
girl?
Please.
Nunes, yo, what if she's like a sneak beast? Like,
yeah, she's just been training like crazy with Nick. Cash me outside, I will put you in a triangle choke. So
she's been training.
We gotta stop doing these jokes.
She's been training.
That's great. Shevchenko is doing. I'm sure she's been working on her guard. Shevchenko, and once in a while she'll try him out.
Rear's always naked.
Listen, if she wants to get some drilling in from turtle position, Nunes versus Shevchenko. God damn it! This is a rescheduled fight. Shevchenko looking to be the first person to be able to beat Nunes in the cage. Actually, that's not true. Kat Zingano did back in the day. Yeah. I take that back. But Amanda Nunes has just been this wrecking ball, beating the shit out of everybody. But Shevchenko, man, she has looked great. She beat the shit out of Holly Holm. She beat the shit out of Juliana Pena. Do you remember how badly she beat up Juliana Pena? And that first fight with Amanda Nunes, this is technically a rematch. They fought in 2016, which is not that long ago. Nunes won the first round pretty handily, eked out the second round barely, and then completely got dominated in the third round. Completely gassed.
I think that we have a better version of both fighters coming into this fight.
I agree. So
it's going to be very interesting, but the one thing I will give Shevchenko the advantage is in the striking. And that's what's been giving girls hell, is Amanda Nunes' striking. So if the striking is nullified, then she can survive to the later rounds. Now, Amanda Nunes has had a problem with gassing out. Now,
consistently, not just against Shevchenko. Many, many times. It's why Zingano beat her.
So if she can't go 3 rounds, how's she going to deal with 5?
I don't think she can.
Yeah.
I think this is a tailor-made fight for Shevchenko to pick up this belt. Which sucks because the UFC is... I mean, Nunes is marketable, I think. I don't know why she doesn't get marketed. I guess because she doesn't speak English that well. They don't put as much promotional push into her as I think they should. To me, she should be on every billboard.
See, there's a girl who Shevchenko beat many years ago who's been dying for a rematch.
Oh, throw the people that name. Do you happen to have the name offhand? Can you pronounce the last name?
Joanna Champion. Joanna Violence. Joanna Jędrzejczyk.
Yeah, there you go.
You
got it. Yeah,
I got it.
But you couldn't get the fucking Gonzalez? Okay.
Yeah.
Jędrzejczyk, no problem. Gonzalez, what is this? Okay. So, yeah.
She almost replaced her.
They fought in kickboxing. Yeah. Shevchenko won over Joanna, which says everything you need to know. You know what I mean about her level of striking.
But Joanna was ready to replace Amanda Nunes at the time that Nunes pulled out when this fight was originally scheduled. Yeah,
on the same day. And the only reason they couldn't get it is like, we can't give her a pregnancy test in time. She was like, you think any weak man could impregnate me? Me, Joanna Champion? There's no seed that is worthy of that. How dare you?
She's full Viking.
She is. Oh my God. She could just drag me away by the hair. So who do you pick? I pick Shevchenko. Moving on to the next fight.
This is a fantastic fight.
Neil Magny fighting Rafael dos Anjos. Neil Magny, who is the tallest 170. People
Yes.
underrate how tall he is. He is so fucking tall. He's coming off of a big win over a fat and old Johnny Hendricks. Before that, he got blasted out by Lorenz Larkin, but he's finally found his footing in the division. I think there was a lot of time where Neil Magny was on the come up. I feel like Neil Magny is very established right now. He's kind of found his level in that like 6'7" spot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's fighting Rafael dos Anjos, who is his second time at the weight class, I think. He lost the title to Eddie Alvarez. He lost decision to Tony Ferguson over 5 rounds. No shame in either of those losses. Yeah. This is after, taking the title and defending the title and beating the shit out of guys like Cowboy and Anthony Pettis, Nate Diaz. He beat the brakes off Nate Diaz. Do you remember how badly he beat the shit out of Nate Diaz? It was unbelievable. He won over Tarek Saffiedine, which is a little bit of an overrated win, right? These days.
He looked great, though.
He did. He looked great, and he looked big. He hasn't suffered as much as you would think from the USADA era. Yeah. Like, he suffered a little bit, but he's not suffering as much as you might think. But it did force him to go up to 170 because he couldn't IV, he couldn't use some weight-cutting stuff he was using.
To be fair, he was the lightweight champion during the USADA era.
Was he?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true, because we were like, how is this dude still doing it?
Because remember, he was
Tyron Woodleying, whereas like somebody we were all sure was on steroids. Nothing changed once he got to USADA.
He's one of the guys whose body got better after the IVs and everything were removed.
Yeah, that's true. So fuck what I just said. This is a good fight to see if Rafael dos Anjos. This is basically a fight to see like is he in that upper echelon?
I think he is.
If you can come in and beat Neil Magny, you probably belong in that upper echelon.
See, I think 2 mistakes happened. I think when he went to Thailand to just focus on kickboxing, I think was when he experienced some of his decline because he wasn't training in all aspects of MMA. And I feel like that's one of those things that now that he's back and he's training with his old camp, I think he's going to do a lot better going into this fight.
I agree. I like Neil.
And he looked great in his last fight. I was really impressed with him at this new weight class.
To me, this fight is all going to come down to the distancing. And I'm really interested to see how Rafa deals with the jab of Neil Magny that so many people have had trouble with.
And he has speed.
Can fucking Stefan Struve fight like Neil Magny for one fucking fight, honestly? Because Neil Magny fights like he's 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
And it is like he's 7 feet. You have to really crash in on him. But I do like Rafael in this fight to be able to drag him down a couple of times. Rafa's fought bigger guys before. And I think he's going to be able to do really, really well here. I like him to chip.
Dos Anjos.
I'm going to go Dos Anjos. I like him to chip with the leg kicks, takedown or 2 per round, 3-round decision. Probably 2-1, if I had to guess. I think Neil will pick up the 3rd round.
I think he saw a lot of flaws in Neil Magny's game with the Larkin loss, and I think he's going to try to expose a lot of them as well.
Agreed. The people's main event on this card is Gilbert Melendez at 35 years old.
We're not going to break down Latifi versus Tyson Pedro?
That is not the people's main event. The most overrated...
Have you seen Latifi's Instagram page?
No. Isn't it just him doing like weird dude shit? Like
he thinks he's the sexiest man on earth.
Listen, man, live your truth.
Like, do you remember the Old Spice commercial about the guy who was like, "This is me without a shirt. This is me on a horse."
Yeah.
Like that whole thing. Like it's basically Latifi.
They just followed around Latifi for a couple of days. Like, okay, we're gonna do that. We're gonna do that. No, I am not going to talk about that. Gilbert Melendez, I am going to talk about because he's the most overrated fighter in the UFC. He has 1 win. It's over Diego Sanchez. If anyone would like a win over Diego Sanchez, just fight Diego Sanchez. You can probably pick up the win. That's very disrespectful to him, but he needs to retire. The ride is over with Diego. But that was Fight of the Year candidate. He has lost 4 out of his 5 UFC fights, and he is taking on Jeremy Lil Heathen Stevens, who is coming off of para losses himself. He lost to Renato Carneiro. He lost to Frankie Edgar. No shame in that. But he did beat Renan Barão before that. Gilbert Melendez is 35. He's never been at 145 before. I think that's a huge problem. And he doesn't tend to do well with these giant power punchers like Jeremy Stevens. Honestly, I think Gilbert Melendez is just wildly, wildly overrated. I think he got brought in as like this A+ number 1 talent. Oh my God, did you see that he beat Gabe Lemley in Strikeforce? Holy shit, this guy must be. Where is he on your pound for pound list? He's number 1 on mine. He beat Tetsuji Kato 10 years ago. Oh my God, these other guys I've just. He beat Rumina Sato on a cut, fucking in 2005. This guy must be the next Fedor. Jesus Christ, I had to hear so much shit about how amazing Gilbert Melendez would be in the UFC.
Strikeforce champion.
I had to hear so much shit about how amazing he would be in the UFC. I am not buying it. Because you know who he beat that people are like, well, he beat this guy? It was Jorge Masvidal. who I also think is overrated. It's like he beat Jorge.
Josh Thompson.
He did beat Josh Thompson. That was a good win. I'll give him the Josh Thompson.
He beat Kawajiri.
He did beat Kawajiri. That's a little bit more suspect too.
Why?
First of all, Gilbert Melendez is for sure on steroids. I want to say that right now. Second,
have you seen Kawajiri?
Kawajiri is also on steroids. I give you that. I agree.
He beat Shinya Aoki.
Get these guys over to the UFC and we'll talk. Because he beat a lot of dudes when it didn't matter. When the eyes were not on. He's in the UFC. He cannot produce. Edson Barboza ate him up like he was chicken.
He still made it to the third round. And this is an older Gilbert Melendez. This isn't prime 20-something-year-old Gilbert Melendez, who just out wrestling people.
Yeah, nobody's. The fights with Josh Thompson were like a year before he started getting his ass whooped. Do you remember this? I didn't think. He gets his title shot. He gets choked out in the second round. It's the only time he's ever been stopped.
That's when Pettis was unstoppable, when Pettis had a swag on.
Pettis was unstoppable because he was beating guys like Gilbert Melendez. Anybody can look unstoppable against Gilbert Melendez on that level.
He beat Ben Henderson.
Did he? No, he didn't.
Pettis?
Oh, yeah. Pettis did. Yeah, fair.
You said he only looked good because he beat Gilbert Melendez.
Yeah.
And he beat Cowboy Cerrone.
Listen, we could get into a whole big thing. Everybody's trash. Gilbert Melendez sucks.
And he's going to fight against Jeremy Stephens.
Yes, Jeremy Stephens. Biggest power, below 155, biggest power.
Do you know when like a girl kind of dates like a guy who's like beneath her, like he's a little bit like not that good, he's not that wealthy, he's not that good looking, and let's be honest, he doesn't have that great personality, but she believes in him. Yes. And no matter how many times he fucks up, she always thinks, you know what? He's going to turn it around today. Today's the day he turns around. That's how I feel about Jeremy Stephens. I've been following him for years, saying
he's going to be a decade ago.
Yeah, when I first saw him, I was like, that's the next world champ. He's 23 years old, man, but like soon he's going to get it done. I've seen him, his ups and downs. He's had runs. He beat Renan Barão. Then he lost a couple. And like each time, I'm like, you know what? He's going to get his shit together. I believe in him, and I stand by him 100%.
The band is going to make it. Has not come together yet.
But you know what, though? Has he looked like he's missed a step?
I don't think he just ever evolved that much. You know,
he's like a tank.
He still looks great. He doesn't look like he has that polish that'll get him through to that top 3 level kind of thing. So he never. Maybe it's mismanagement. Because this Jeremy Stephens though has enough to beat Gilbert Melendez.
Yeah.
10-second knockout.
And I think it'll be a great victory for him.
We're agreeing. 10-second knockout. Anything else for the week, Jesse Rivas?
Yes. Look at this undercard, man. Look at the prelims.
Don't front like you were looking
Henry
at it.
Cejudo versus Wilson Hayes. That's a good fight.
That's a great fight. Henry Cejudo, Olympic world champion wrestler. Wilson Hayes, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, coming off that loss to Demetrious Johnson. I think both guys are coming off the loss to Demetrious Johnson. I'm going to be interested to see where Cejudo's head is at, if he still wants in on this, now that he knows that he's not the best of all time.
Or he could be. I mean, not of all time, no. But, like, he could definitely win a title because, I mean, I bet you everyone in this weight class is just, like, licking their chops because they know Demetrious is moving up.
Do you remember he also had that loss, super controversial, very close decision loss to Benavidez?
Yeah.
So he's coming off 2 losses.
And that could be the eliminator. That could be the crowning the next champion, that rematch.
That is true. So I think Cejudo, if he loses this fight, will retire. I think Wilson Hayes is very, very gritty. But it's a terrible style matchup for Wilson, who does most of his best work on top. He's not getting on top in this fight.
Yeah.
So Cejudo is going to pick up that win.
It's going to be a great fight. A lot of great fights.
There's like fun, like there's also prospects on here. There's some undefeated guys. Gavin Tucker's undefeated. Ketlin Vieira, I'm excited to see how she does against Sarah McMahon, homegirl Sarah McMahon. There's guys
who
just
is the daughter of Vince McMahon.
Fuck out of here. Like you said, Latifi versus Pedro is a fun fight, just because there's nobody at 205. Rick Glenn of Bellator fame is fighting Gavin Tucker, who's an undefeated prospect. That'll be a cool fight. Rick Glenn, very good judo player. Don't see that as often as I would hope.
Rick Hahn?
That is Rick Hahn. But Rick Glenn was in Bellator. Fuck you. Listen, I didn't fuck up Gonzalez.
You fucked up 2 white people from each other just because the first names are Rick, like I did with Romans.
Rick Hahn is not white. Isn't Rick Hahn like, he's like Samoan or something weird, you know what I mean?
He looks like a white guy to me.
No, there's something going on here. Why are you putting me in a position where I have to be wildly racist? Okay, his nickname is Genghis, so for sure he cannot be white. Rick Genghis Han, like,
it's a corny
really
play
hope
on his
he
last
is
name.
not. Really hope he's not a white guy. For sure, please don't be a white person. What else you got for the week, Chester Reeves? Do you have anything else for the week, Chester Reeves?
Nothing for the week.
Put yourself over.
Follow me on social
Boy,
media.
there's
Jay
nothing
Reeves
in here
Comedy.
about what his race is. I really hope Rick Han is not a white dude. That would be a problem.
He's 100% a white guy.
Oh, no.
He looks like you remember like the old UFC guy? They used to be on all the belts before Zuffa bought them.
I can't talk about what he looks like without being wildly racist. As a white person, I'm not allowed to do that. That's the real racism in America, is that I cannot tell people that Chinese people have giant eyes, or whatever racial stereotype you want to believe in. I had to go with one.
And follow me on Facebook.
Will you end this
Chester
fucking
Reeves.
podcast? It's only going to get worse.
And like our page, Fighters Block on Facebook.
Thank you. For all of us here at the show, we'll be back next week with some more fight stuff. See all you guys soon here on the block.
Love, peace, and happiness.